Hey, I even got it at that time. I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM players, and everything is right in the world because I actually got the notification before he did.
Oh my God. That wait, maybe something's wrong in the world then.
Yeah, you would think it would be okay for the guy that hits the button to actually get the notification first, but
Apparently
it
not
is.
according to StreamYard, right? So
Anyway, it is a Thursday afternoon, and you know what that is. You know what that means. Can you tell us? We really don't know what that means.
I don't honestly have a clue. I know that I sit here a lot on Thursday afternoons.
I sit here a lot. Period. I have nowhere to go, so it's
I'm in a different room.
well, it is the CRM players, and well, let's see. This week we have at least two big events that happened this week. We had SAPPHIRE, the keynote, at least for SAPPHIRE. It's like an ongoing show after the keynote. It goes on for a while, and then connections.
Yeah, which it's funny that the difference between the way they're addressing the two. I mean, SAPPHIRE is literally a 2-week event, right? And I think the analyst part of it's next week, isn't it? Or the week after, even.
Something like that.
Like the 15th or 16th or something like that. And other than that, they're spacing out all those things over time, right? All the rest of it, the tracks and everything over time. And Salesforce is like cramming it into like 3 hours one day and basically hour and a half analyst thing another day, and it's all over. Just a
now we can
approach.
We can officially start the show because
there
he is, folks.
Yeah, we're just making small talk till he got on.
Yeah, and it's actually something that we can we know what it is. It's English this time around, so it's kind of nice.
Unless it's encrypted, it's like a coded language, and it means something else entirely.
That could be true with Sven. You never know.
I just don't actually.
So we do have a guest that will be joining us in a little while, but I thought while we take a few minutes to, any initial thoughts that we might have had around the events. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go with Salesforce connections first? And I actually have a clip, and we'll play that, and then you give us your impressions of what you've heard so far.
Here we go.
I hope this works.
Over 3 billion marketing messages delivered, doubled Commerce Cloud transactions to 3 million a day, 5 billion service case interactions, and nearly 100 billion AI predictions from product recommendations to dynamic messages. For the first time ever, more than half of all ad spend was digital. Consumers worldwide spent over $4 trillion online in 2020. And that's not just shirts and shoes. Think of the groceries you buy on Instacart, the meals you purchased on DoorDash. Food and beverage is up 53% year over year, the highest of any category. And the future lies in exceptional digital experiences and creating trusted, personalized connections with your customers.
All right. So I just like first of all, I have to say, I liked the stats, the data points, but I also liked the way well, you couldn't really tell it on this because it was terribly jittery. I had to actually do a screen recording to get that clip in instead of being able to download it. That would be nice if I could have downloaded it, maybe some YouTube or something. Anyway, I liked how the data points were good. I like how they were presented. It felt like I was watching a TV show of sorts with captions and data, and then she tied it in. It's a very short clip here, but basically the bottom line is, we've definitely increased our digital shopping, and companies had to go from letting people go to the store to actually creating direct connections. So you had that direct to consumer thing. And that kind of set the stage for a lot of the announcements they had during the course of, what is that, like an hour and a half for the keynote or something like that?
Yeah. Well, that's in total, actually, everyone's individual little speechlets were 8 minutes or 7 minutes. They were really short. Sarah kind of oversaw it all. For those of you who don't know, that's Sarah Franklin, who's the chief marketing officer of Salesforce globally. Every one of
President
her,
and CMO. Did I say
yeah,
that?
president
Yeah,
and
president,
CMO.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's look, president at Salesforce is like being a vice president of a bank. It's like everybody's president at Salesforce. I mean, it's like
But there's only one CMO.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's really she's the latest CMO, and she kind of oversaw it, so she was on stage the most. But these are very short, kind of quick, boom, boom, boom approaches to things, which more or less tended to work. I mean,
Yeah,
I
think so.
I thought that honestly, I thought there were two things which weren't necessarily pointed up the way I'm about to point them out, but I thought were really important. One related to this conference is focused on marketing and commerce, so that's pretty much the messages you're going to get. The first thing was the announcement of the Salesforce CDP, and then the second one, which I'll get into in a minute, was just kind of their general commerce announcements, but that leads to a certain kind of thing that I want to go to. And from the standpoint of the CDP, look, I mean, again, I still have my let's say I don't like the hype still around CDP. That said, if you recognize it for what it is, which is basically an active real-time approach to what was the system of record, right? Meaning that you could actually act on it in real time as it was gathering the data, and you could then use the data and gather more appropriately. I mean, in other words, it was a constantly interactive, active system of record. If you take it that way, then this is an important announcement for Salesforce, because basically it gives them the kind of data flows they're going to need to get kind of real-time information about consumers and businesses that they're going to that they're going to get for their customers to use with their product. And it kind of goes to the commerce announcement itself too, which I think is really, they didn't announce this as such, but there's something really important about what Salesforce is doing in commerce, which I don't think is public enough or is discussed enough. They're doing B2B to C, e-commerce. And you can't miss that one, okay? Because look, it comes from Demandware being acquired and then CloudCraze being acquired, and took a while, and it really did take a while because they were very different kind of cultures. But now CloudCraze and Demandware are fully integrated into Salesforce, both from a product and a cultural standpoint, and standpoint of the teams that are putting together. And Salesforce is basically giving you this really, really interesting end-to-end, which is also going to allow at another level Salesforce to handle, I hope reasonably seamlessly. I mean, I can't speak to the actual quality of the product in action. I haven't seen it. Salesforce will be able to handle things like wholesalers and retailers, where wholesalers compete with their own retailers, but have certain things in common and don't. And I actually ran across that specific situation literally in Zagreb, Croatia in 2006, so I've never forgotten that fact that sometimes wholesalers will compete with the retailers they serve, right? And how do you handle that? Well, Salesforce has actually built an e-commerce solution that can do that, right? At least in theory. And I think, if you look at the typical commerce solutions out there, they're mostly B2B, mostly. And
or B2C.
Well, there's the standalone, the biggest remaining standalone is B2C, right? But the ones that were acquired were pretty much all B2B, but Salesforce acquired both, and now they've made it work. And I think that if I'm looking for the single standout announcement of connections, that's it, right? That Salesforce is actually announcing a B2B2C
and
product.
The timing was really important, because look what happened over with the pandemic. People couldn't shop the way they normally would, which would go to a retail store and buy something. So how were those manufacturers supposed to get the word and the product and the connection to the customers if they couldn't use the retail channel to do that? So I think this has huge ramifications moving forward, because even after we get fully out of the pandemic, these folks have now are creating their own chain to go, to communicate either via the retail or directly to the consumer, and that's not going away. That's gonna only accelerate, I think, as we come out of this.
Totally agree with you on that one. And then the last thing I would say on it, it also makes this really, yeah, it is new.
They
I mean,
announced
they've
it a
had
while
things-
back, but yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Let's say it hasn't existed till now.
It's really, I think it's really, this is the coming out party, so to speak.
Right.
for it. And then
Look,
the integrations with between the Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud, so that they have that integration to the CDP. And what I thought was really interesting was, I hadn't really heard about this as much as, underneath, I think it's underneath the Marketing Cloud, or at least there's a piece of the loyalty management is a nice growing of importance component to this. And you had that with the CDP and the integration with commerce. I think there's a lot of meat there to, like you said, maybe it didn't get as much time during the keynote, but eventually I think that's going to be pretty critical.
I agree. And the I guess the last thing I would say is, I mean, I remember several years ago when I was doing some original, I was starting to do some research on e-commerce and B2B commerce. And it was very interesting when I was looking at the studies that were out there. Most people said, yeah, we'd be happy to buy online, B2B companies. We'd be happy to buy online if the experience was like it is on B2C, like it is on Amazon, right? In particular, was the one, of course, that everyone's working from. And the interesting thing is what Salesforce provides allows that to be the case. And, so that the experience is a consumer-like experience, but on a B2B kind of actual site, if that's the way you want to do it. Hey, Adrian, Go Vanilla Forum.
They already gone.
So
they've been acquired. They're gone.
That's right. Oh, chocolate now. So, right. So the thing is that I think that the UI UX kind of ability to kind of make it consumer-like, and now, which they have, is just another real plus in their arsenal.
Yeah, no, I thought, and I'll just say, I like the aesthetics. I like the outside feeling. It felt live. The house band they had it was really cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
That was nice. I mean, I thought it was very well presented. For the most part too. So, in addition to the messaging. All right,
absolutely agree.
So, Sapphire, and I have a couple of clips. There's two big takeaways for me from Sapphire. Let me play this first one, and then we'll talk about it. Oh, wait a minute. Where's the sound on this guy?
Well, luckily it's got
There is, by the way, a clear parallel with our daily lives using social networks, such as...
Let me do this. Let me run it back. Here we go.
COVID showed us just how crucial it is to have real-time transparency across your entire supply chain. There is, by the way, a clear parallel with our daily lives using social networks, such as Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. The value comes from the network and the millions of interconnections it facilitates in real time. But nobody has done this yet for businesses doing business together. Today, we are announcing the next part of our strategy to create the world's largest and most comprehensive business network. We believe that industries will be revolutionized when businesses turn into communities. We want to connect every company across your entire supply chain, and in doing so, provide you with immense value from being a member of this community. Buyers, multi-tiered suppliers, logistic providers, manufacturers, and banks will be able to respond to any disruptions real time through their connections in the network.
I thought this was fascinating, this part of it.
Yeah.
Remember when ServiceNow talked about they wanted to be the platform for platforms?
Yeah.
These guys are talking about they want to be the network for networks from a business perspective. And I thought that was really an interesting kind of way. And they've already identified in the keynote a couple of, they have a supply chain network. They've got a couple of business networks already in place. Now they're going to connect them and then make them available to customers, partners, what have you. And I got to say that really that was probably one of the most interesting things I heard this whole conference season.
Well, no, I can't agree more. I mean, the thing, unlike last year, which was kind of a mixed bag of messaging and so on, look, SAP starts from one standpoint, and they start from the standpoint of being intelligent enterprise, right? That's where they start, and that message was developed in 2018, I think it was, and they haven't wavered from it. And it's actually a really good message for them. I mean, they're one or two companies who can actually say it and do it. The other thing, which I thought was important to your point too, is that they functionally kind of focused, if you listen to that segment of Christian's speech, on the supply chain. And that is that's another one of their major powers. And the thing is that if you go all the way back in history to SAP, they were the first ones to recognize the fact that the supply chain was customer centered. They knew that way back. In fact, if you remember, they had a product which, eventually just kind of folded into the supply chain product, which was called supplier relationship management, right? And it was a tremendous product. They're actually a really good product. They've always understood the nature of and the importance of the supply chain and the impact it has on both just the way the world runs, but also on customers, actual people. And so by tying that supply chain network to becoming a community of businesses, right? It's a really, really powerful potential message. Now, where the jury's still out for me, honestly, on that is if they pull it off. I mean, the reality is that is not going to be. That's a big goal. And talking about reinventing the world, which that one I just write off for just like over the top messaging. They're not going to reinvent the world, right? But they're gonna help. They may help improve it if they can do this, but and they may make some things that that become important to future business, but that's not reinventing the world. The thing is that, however, I do think, and I'll leave it at this, is that if they can put forward, they to do this, they can't only put out great products. They've got to have the ideas, the concepts. They have to become thought leaders in this, right? In order to actually do it, because right now the framework for this doesn't even exist really, right? I mean, say fragments do everywhere, but not a full framework has to be put together to make this a real thing. And right now, no one has that. They certainly don't. I don't know. Maybe you do somewhere. If you do, let's kind of roll it out real quick. No. But I just think that the opportunity, the message, the idea for them is both smart, on point. It separates signal from signal, but now they got to actually proceed to do it, and that's the part I'm still waiting on. And when I say that, I mean I literally am not sure they can succeed at it. I don't have no confidence in it, but I don't have like any feel that it's guaranteed either. Let's just say that.
All right. Well, I think the thing that it's stood out so much like a sore thumb, the pandemic, and I think it was somebody gave the stat during the keynote. I can't remember what it was, but it said 75% of all businesses supply chains were disrupted during the pandemic. That's a huge opportunity when you think about it. I mean, like you said, it's all about can you do it, but they've got certain components and enough to give it a go, whereas others can't even think about something like this, which gives them, something that like big risk, big reward from that standpoint. And then this is the last clip from this. This is the second piece that I thought was really interesting.
Act now on sustainability with the goal.
Let me do this. Keep on.
We must act now on sustainability with the goal of zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. It's time to build sustainability into the fabric of how we do business. And what's exciting? Part of the solutions is in our hands. Given the significance of global supply chains in tackling sustainability, the SAP community truly has the power to protect our planet and create a future our children want to be part of. We will make carbon footprint tracking available in the business network so that you can go to true net zero. We will let you turn your circular economy vision into reality. We will jointly build networks with you that champion diversity, inclusion, and human rights.
All right, that was really interesting to me because I have not heard an enterprise put into the equation sustainability and equality, and present that as something that should be ingrained, as part of the business, as part of the business model. I thought that was interesting, and then you put that on top of what we just talked about with their approach to being the network for networks. So having a community of businesses circled around these various networks, and then structuring it with the kind of this at the heart, sustainability and equality. That, I mean, they're aiming big, but I am so glad to hear a company aim big, and a company like SAP who has the opportunity to make a dent. I won't say can completely pull it off, but I thought that was really great to hear.
And I would agree. Last year, it was the way they put it wasn't so great. Sustainability last year equaled profitability, and that was not a good message. It was just straight out dumb message. And this year, they're finally. Look. There's two things. SAP has always been on. This is a more specific piece of that, but they've always been big champions of zero carbon footprint. And they've been building technologies for that since it must be like 2012 or 2013 or something like that. And it's always been like one of the things that they had going for them that they actually would say, but they kept doing this equation to you'll make money if you do it, right? This is the first year, and it's what is heartening to, and actually then goes to your larger point that they're not trying to equate it with money, right? They're trying to equate it with doing the right thing for the planet. They're trying to equate it with what, if you're going to be a business, what stewardship should actually be. Now, again, to your point again, it's a big, everything they announced was gigantic job. Right? It's like utterly gigantic. Are they going to commit the resources to do it? Are they going to, all those questions remain. And, hopefully people like you, me, other analysts and other people can kind of, keep a friendly pressure on them, can both support it and at the same time push them when they veer. Which once you say it, as far as I'm concerned, in the public domain, then you're going to be beholden to it. And so I'm looking forward to SAP pulling all this off. I hope they do. They're kind of in, I believe that they mean it. We'll see what it means in terms of realization. I hope at least the first signs of that coming very soon. They have the means, they have the methods, and they have the means, and they have the desire now to see if they can produce what they hoped to produce.
I say we hold Esteban's feet to the fire on this. All this.
I agree.
Yeah.
In fact, we make him solely responsible.
Well, no, we'll let Sven have some responsibility as well, since he's
all right. Good idea. So, how about Sven, Esteban, Bob, and Samir?
Samir, right? Yeah,
all of them. They're all now totally responsible for this entire global program.
While they're eating chicken wings, hot wings.
That's right.
Throw Ratul in there as well.
Ratul's going for zero emissions.
Whoa. Oh no. Hot wings and zero emissions, they don't really go along together.
No. That's what they'll have to do. They'll have to eliminate the hot wings competition to get to zero emissions.
I don't know how we got to this and you're introducing our guests, but we're going from zero emission hot wings to our guest. and I will let you do the honors after I bring him up. And he's sporting some like, what's a Citgo? What got
Citgo?
some stock in there or something?
No, this should be a friendly picture for Mr. Greenberg. This is right
Citgo.
outside of the most important religious site in all of Boston, Fenway Park.
Oh, that boy, you literally want to get off the show now, don't you?
Well, hey, I don't know how you're going to go from hot wings to me, but I'm eager to hear.
Well, no, actually, since you're pushing the Red Sox so hard, we just by emitting you from the show,
Yeah, we'll just take that
Take 'em
name
off.
tag right off, and yeah.
then go or change your name to Hot Wing, right? So John Bruno, who listen, let me just say what I said on LinkedIn because that really is it. If you haven't seen this, I will repeat it more or less. When I met John, he was just starting out at Forrester. And within a very short time period, I realized that this is the smartest young analyst I had ever met in my life, bar none. To this day, nobody's passed him yet. Then John and I both got involved with pros. He from Forrester side, me as as an independent and a friend of the company. And what happened later is just became a foregone conclusion that he was going to end up at pros. Both of us love the company. We love the people at the company. I'm too old to be anything but independent, so I wasn't going to end up there. But the thing is that John, it was foregone that he was going to be vice president. He was going to be head of strategy, and he was going to be at pros. And guess what he is? Vice president, strategy, pros now. And guess what's still there? Brilliant. Young is starting to go a little bit, but Brilliant is still there. Right. Right. So, yay, John, welcome.
Yeah, the Zoom does a little bit of touch up. So the grays that would normally appear in the beard, it's difficult to tell over Zoom. But it's actually funny. The first event that I went to as a Forrester analyst was actually where I met both of you. And that was Pros Outperform, January 2016 in Orlando at Disney.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I remember the event. I didn't realize that was the first time you met.
First time we met.
I didn't realize, and I didn't realize that was the first analyst event you had gone to, or analyst, gone to as an analyst.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow! Wow, matches made in heaven right away.
Yeah.
Well, I remember. Look, I mean, I've met a lot of young analysts over the years, and I have at multiple events that I've been to. Brent's been to most of them too, and you just you just blew me away. You literally blew me away like immediately. Aside from the fact that you're just a genuinely great person, your head was like amazing. It's like
That's something you hardly ever hear on this show. Your head was amazing.
Yeah, he had an amazing head. He did. It just like he just put together things so quickly, and they were so deep and accurate simultaneously. So let me ask you this then, because at some point I do want to go from we want to go from let's say the genesis from analyst to vendor. But before we go there, talk more about what you're doing at pros and about pros, because I think most of our audience has probably heard of pros, but there are some that probably haven't. So why don't you fill people on it and you there?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have interacted with pros either knowingly or unknowingly, right? So we're kind of known for two things in the market. We're known for being the airline company. So when you log on at different times of the day and see different prices for your airfare based on class, based on destination, always up for you. You're logging on too frequently. So we're known for being the player in the airline space that does all of your retailing, that does all of your fare booking, whether it be through your airline, through your aggregator, through your booking agent, you name it, individual, group sales. But the other side of the business, which kind of piggybacked off of the airline side, is really what we do in B2B. And we had realized years ago that solving the pricing problem for airlines was a very difficult proposition. The other difficult proposition that was out there in the pricing space was, how do you solve for all this complexity around B2B? You've got negotiated prices, you've got volume-based prices, you've got loyalty-based prices. You're trying to attract new customers and determine what those kinds of commercial arrangements should look like. And it's really, really, really complex. So we also developed a really strong brand in the B2B space for taking over our know-how in solving for really complex pricing scenarios. And over the years, we've even parlayed those into how you start to digitize the selling motion, right? So a lot of people have become familiar with the acronym CPQ, or configure, price, quote. For us, it's twofold. One is it allows us to also digitally enable salespeople, be it direct or indirect, in how they put together offers for their customers. And when there's a requirement for, selling complex items, which in many B2B cases, manufacturers, industrial machinery, medical devices, that kind of stuff pops up. And so we allow organizations to sell even the most complex items in a really streamlined, straightforward fashion. So that's a little bit about pros. And for me, one of the reasons why I was super excited to join, beyond all of the things that you had mentioned earlier, Paul, was the fact that COVID did have a huge impact on, the world. And so for us, we've done all of these great things in kind of building pricing strategies, helping companies execute on those through their direct and indirect sales forces. But seemingly overnight, the world moved almost entirely digital. So people were buying things online, even people you never thought would buy things online. You've seen forecasts for online marketplaces shoot through the roof overnight. And so how do you take everything that we've done and increase its applicability in that digital world? We've been doing it for a while now, but like you had kind of alluded to, not everyone knew about it. So my role at Pros is really to help shape the strategy, not for the next 12 months, but the next 5 years and beyond, in terms of how we fit into that world that is increasingly growing more and more digital. So how do we support more of those self-service, customer engagement moments in a way that's going to lead to happy customers that convert, that become loyal, and become your biggest advocates?
So let me ask you this, because there's another aspect of Pros, which I think, if you know the company, you might know this, but most people won't, even if they generally know the company. But I know in my years of working with the company as an advisor, I found one thing that was remarkable, which is I think they have you guys have one of the most amazing AI platforms I've ever seen. When I say that, it literally can do anything you want it to do. You want to go somewhere that has nothing to do with pricing whatsoever. You want to go into, literally your AI platform going and physically populating and making livable a planet. It probably could, right? It's just that good. And I know you have Michael Wu, of course, as your AI strategy guy and chief scientist. And what about, because given you're looking at 5 years out, so to speak, how are you thinking in terms of that AI platform? Again, I find it to be an astonishing platform, better than pretty much any other one I've seen on the market, including the big guys.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. So for starters, we invest dollar for dollar far more than just about any other company that I've ever encountered when it comes to data science and AI. So we're always innovating and doing really great things there. I think a lot of folks know us for, obviously, intelligence around pricing or product recommendations, things of that nature. But increasingly, and before I joined, you talked a lot about supply chains. And with all of the disruptions, you think about, the semiconductor market right now, or, even something that might be a blip on the radar or a flash in the pan, like a ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal. That has material impacts on your business. So how do organizations do things like leverage artificial intelligence to, forecast, their inventory levels, to look deep into their supply chain, and to make real-time business decisions based on, what the context of their business is going to look like. So we've gone beyond pricing. We've done a lot of things around demand forecasting, looking at where inventory is, really connecting both the supply and the demand side of the market. That's for one. You mentioned platform. So I'm going to take a little moment here to humble brag a little bit on platform. From my days as being a head of product in the past too, one of the things that I came to appreciate is that our best innovations had always come from our customers. You think you can always, be out in front of them, but they're going to push you to do things you've never done before and have really unique business requirements that you haven't encountered yet. So one of the things that we've been doing, investing a lot in over the past several years, is the ability for our customers to actually bring their own data science and AI competencies to our platform. Meaning, how are you going to manage all of the models you're running? How are you going to do A/B or multivariate testing around which models perform best in which situations? How are you going to make more data available so your customers and their algorithms can run even better? So we actually allow our customers, if they've got a Python or a model in R, to actually take that model, run it on the Pros platform in conjunction with our capabilities or on its own. So we are fully embracing the notion of a platform and extending all of the kind of core infrastructure capabilities of that to allow our customers and their specialization or expertise to shine through.
Amazing.
Yeah, I remember one of the last analyst events that was face-to-face with pros. I remember the term "bring your own algorithms" being used, which I thought was pretty interesting. But talk a little bit about the relationship you had with your customers during the pandemic. How did the relationships they had with their customers, and I'm talking about the airline industry, of course, how did that impact the way that you had to interact with them? And how have those, what level of permanency has the pandemic and the shifts that were made because of it? How permanent are some of those interactions and the way that you and the airlines evolved together change coming out of this thing?
Yeah, I think when you go through what businesses had gone through over the past 18 months, you really start to see what individuals and companies are made out of. And, seemingly overnight again, the whole travel economy just shut down. Different analysts were saying a 75% decrease in volume, a 90% decrease in volume. And yeah, our customers felt it. We've got a lot of the world's major airlines. And at Pros, we've always kind of prided our relationships and our commitment to customer success. And that was no different in the most trying of times. So if you look at some of the comments made by Andres and our CFO, Stefan, over our earnings calls over the past 4 quarters or so, you'll hear them talk about the concessions that we made to our customers. We're talking millions of dollars of, forgiven or deferred payments. And for them, that meant the world. They could get back to, focusing on their business, focusing on recovery. We also, under the guidance of our good friend Michael Lupal, we had set up a COVID task force. So we had invited our customers to kind of opt in and share some additional data. And we set up a task force that was dedicated to doing nothing other than helping to identify, forecast, and predict recovery for our airline customers. And I think, although 2020 was a trying year on many fronts, it did bring us a lot closer to a lot of our customers. And so now, as we kind of enter this period of recovery, I know that I took my first flight in 16 months. I just arrived yesterday visiting my in-laws in North Carolina, and the airports were booming. But when our customers are looking at the relationships that have been strengthened and bolstered over the past, 12 to 16 months, as they think about their recovery, they're also coming back to Pros and saying, how can we take the next step and be one step ahead of that recovery? Be ready for when this tidal wave of travelers return. And so it's been a fun ride. It's been definitely some contentious moments, but I think that all in all, we've done right by our customers, and they've shown their appreciation for that.
Just a follow-up real quick. When did you start to feel confident that things are on the upswing? Because I figure you're going to know about it before most of us are going to know about it. When did that happen for you guys?
Yeah, I would say it was probably a couple of months ago. What was interesting, if you kind of go back to the beginning of 2021, I would say the level of optimism was at an all-time high. There's almost kind of this premature jolt of optimism, before we knew what distribution plans of the vaccines were going to look like and things of that nature. And I'd say, where we are right now, we've gone through enough of the lessons learned in things like vaccine distribution to understand how quickly these things are going to change, looking at what kinds of policies have been instrumented, abroad. When you think about some of the porous borders in EMEA and things of that nature. And we've also seen some of our customers in Asia in particular who've done a really good job of masking and vaccinating and kind of being the early adopters there. So I would say, me personally, probably a couple of months ago, and probably pros the same time frame.
So let me take this to a different place about pros, because it's another thing about the company that I think people literally need to be aware of, which is the culture. And it's just you can actually make the case, and when you're competing with cultures like Zoho's and Salesforce's and others, this is not an easy case to make, but you can actually make the case it may be the best culture, period. It's possible case. I don't want to say it's the best because I don't really want to put it in those kind of terms, but the culture is literally that good. And a brief story just to sort of set the stage. So one of my dear friends at Pros is Andres's executive assistant, who's actually a chief of staff when it boils down to it, not an executive assistant. And years ago, we were having a conversation. I just met her, really, and we were just sitting and talking. And I did what I do with a lot of people when they're relatively new acquaintances and young too, which is, what do you see yourself 5 years from now? And usually I hear somebody go, well, I see myself doing this or this or this, right? Some job. Her comment was, she sat for a minute and she thought, and she said, I don't know, but I see myself doing it at Pros. That's what she said to me. I had never heard another comment like that ever, where she had no idea what specific thing she wanted to do, but she knew where she wanted to be, right? And that was amazing. So why don't you talk about the culture and its distinction and what makes it, because I think it's also a lesson for people to learn on how you put together a meaningful culture that keeps people happy and there. So dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, there's so many anecdotes. I could probably give you stories upon stories and stories that really sit at the heart of our culture. I think when it came down to it for me, I remembered, making my decision to leave where I was and join Pros. And one of the things that I did was I picked up my handy dandy iPhone and I started looking through my contact list. And I had realized that absent of any company that I had actually worked for in the past, I had more contacts in my phone, my personal phone, mind you, from Pros than any other company that I've ever interacted with.
Totally.
And I thought that was telling, because you can't just say this is our culture and it happens. Part of it is inorganic, but most of it's organic. And so it comes from the people, it comes from the ground up. And I would say that the other interesting thing about joining Pros is I joined July of last year. As you just heard, I took my first flight for personal reasons less than a week ago. That means I haven't actually been to our office, in our new office, mind you.
Right.
So I've had very little interaction face to face with my colleagues. But I'll tell you, it was the easiest transition ever, partly because I knew a lot of the folks and had existing relationships, but partly because people go out of your way to make you feel welcome, to make you feel included. I kind of described it as a family reunion of sorts. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to our people and our core values. It's the first company that I've worked for that I think, every single day wakes up and believes the core values. So we're owners, we're innovators, and we care. And the we care one is the one for me that means the most. Good day, bad day, indifferent, that the people who are kind of shoulder to shoulder with you care about you professionally, but also care about you as a human being as well.
So let me punctuate that with a story that really tells that. Then this is something that's fairly consistent about the company. And it also goes to, Andres Reiner, who's the CEO and arguably the kindest CEO in the whole industry, right? I mean, that case is almost like you could really make that case, right? So Andres told me something, and I saw evidence of this multiple times since then, that he said, look, when somebody leaves the company, we don't sit there and think, oh, you never can come back, we don't like you. And he said, in fact, we would love to bring them back. And there's two pieces to this, right? And I said, well, why is that? Because I said, there are companies I can think of who would just feel offended that you left them and never rehire you. He said, think about this. They go out, like all human beings, they have things they want to search out and seek and do and try. and then they decide they want to come back. That's an amazing compliment to us that they went out, looked, and didn't find something that they thought was better. They come back. And the other advantage is, he said, they already know the company. It's not like we have to retrain them or bring on board them. He said they already know the company. So, and the other story was this, and it's sort of the opposite side of that, is there are several senior executives who I've known at pros who, for varying reasons, left. And one, he wanted to try something very different, which is more in line with his kind of both social, moral, and religious beliefs. All right. And then another one who left to retire, really. I mean, you know, and then a third one who was leaving for something halfway between, really. Do something in semi-retirement that aligned more with it. But, and then of course, another one who left to take another job recently, fairly recently. But here's what Andres always does. He of course, he tries to talk to them about staying. But if they don't, he says, I'll tell you what, look. And some occasionally they don't even have jobs right yet. But he says, I'll tell you what, just stay. And when you're ready to leave, leave. In the meantime, you have an income. You don't have to worry about your family, right? You know, we're not escorting you. We want to keep you here. And, you know, just when you leave, you leave. That's okay. But we'll keep you employed until you leave. But feel free to go look. I mean, I can think of at least 4 cases he's done that. And in one very senior executive case, when this senior executive asked, got a substantial offer from a large company to go, this executive went to Andres first and said, what do you think I should do? And she trusted him to that level, right? So that's what I'm saying. That's what this culture is like. And
I'll give you one more. I'll give you one more. So when I was thinking about leaving Forrester, you know, I knew that pros was always on my short list of companies that I wanted to work for. And I had a few conversations with Andres about, you know, what that might look like in the future, and let him know that if I was ever ready to go, I'd let him know. And it came down to it. And I took a position leading the product organization at a late stage startup. And so I had to break the news to him that I was ready to leave Forrester and I wasn't going to pros. And I was worried about disappointment. I was worried about how he'd react. He reacted by sending me the nicest note that I had received, congratulating me, telling me it was the right decision. And then when I ended up joining pros, I had a conversation with him again saying, you know, I thought a lot about, you know, where I was in between Forrester and here. And if I were to do it all over again, I would have done it the same way. I said, I think there's so much that I had learned in that experience that just makes me so much more valuable to pros now. And he leaned in and said, you did make the right decision. And so, you know, we both knew that we wanted to work together, and kind of the humility to let me do something different and not feel slighted by that decision. You know, it speaks volumes to his leadership, but that whole kind of mentality cascades through all the way throughout the organization.
Yep. Every level, every single level. So now let's kind of go to the other place though. Analyst, vendor. I mean, it's happened in other cases, you know, Tiffany Bova and Rob DeSisto going to Salesforce. I mean, you know, Esteban going to SAP, you know, things like that. What does that even feel like? I don't have a clue, right?
Yeah, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's the Bostonian. Maybe it's the fact that, you know, I played competitive sports for a while. Man, did I have a chip on my shoulder? You know, I felt like no matter where I was going to go, I was going to have to prove myself to any of the doubters or naysayers who might think that, you know, the analyst job is one where you kind of sit behind a desk and pontificate. It's absolutely not the case. One of the hardest jobs, yet probably one of the most rewarding jobs that anybody could ever have. And I'm sure both of you can relate to that. But I had always worried that I was going to be, oh, this is the former Forrester guy, and so we should listen to him because of that. And so looking at some of the roles that I could have taken afterwards, I wanted to make sure that the role that I was jumping into, I got my hands as dirty as humanly possible. So I left and became head of product management at a late stage startup, which when you're in a late stage startup, you kind of do every role anyways. But over my time there, I took on responsibility for not only product management, but user experience, all of engineering, documentation, our product training and enablement, and a little bit of dotted line with product marketing as well. So I really had my hands in a lot, but it probably took 18 months or so to kind of let that chip go by the wayside a little bit. And it's always there to a certain extent. You always kind of have to prove yourself. So it was definitely interesting, and people kind of expected, you know, an armchair leader, if you will, and that was not going to be my style. I was going to, you know, go in, be on the front lines with everybody, and so that part's been a lot of fun. You know, the thing that's been a little different is, you both know, you can give all the best advice, guidance, and counsel in the world, but ultimately speaking, it's up to somebody else to execute on it. And you can grade them positively or negatively for how well they execute on it, if they did it all, and what the results were. You know, for me, one of the things that I craved top to bottom was accountability for what that counsel was. You know, if I failed miserably, I wanted the accountability. If, you know, it was a smash success, I also wanted the accountability. And so I think taking that into those roles, making the transition from analyst to vendor, was probably the most helpful thing for me.
One last subset of that question, though, because, you know, when you're an analyst, you're not a member of the family, even if you're a member of the family. So you got that third-party validation thing going. But you can say literally word for word the same thing you said as an analyst when you are a member of the family, and nobody will listen to you, right? I mean, half the, you know, well, not half, but let's say there are times you get the idea you're being hired so that somebody else's idea will be accepted because you're saying it, right? So what have you ever run across that at pros? I can't imagine you haven't, but some of that at least.
I would say, I mean, having been an analyst, I'm never shy of an opinion. And I would like to believe that those opinions are based in data and in, you know, strong thinking, strong critical thinking behind it. Are my opinions always the ones that we go with, no matter where I am? No. I will advocate for my point of view as best as possible. And what the kind of philosophy that I ascribe to the most is kind of this notion of a Hegelian dialectic. You have a thesis and an antithesis, and somewhere in the middle, you know, the idea that comes out of that is going to be better than either A or B going into it. Mm-hmm. And so what I love the most is being around other smart people, other opinionated people, and being able to have that respectful but highly energetic debate. And I'll tell you, since I've joined pros, there have been a lot of really great things that haven't been my ideas and haven't necessarily been someone else's ideas that have materialized, you know, because of the culture and because of the opportunity to kind of share those perspectives.
Okay. So just kind of going back to, you know, the relationship with the airlines and how they are operating. How do you? What is the relationship between you know, pros and the airlines? What does that look like 2 or 3, 4 years from now? Is it tangibly different in any way than it was before the pandemic based on what's happened?
Yeah. Yes. Definitively. Yes. And one of the things that's kind of come to light, again, you know, our customers lead a lot of our innovation. And one of the things that's come to light is, even in our airline customer base, they've always kind of thought of us as, you know, that revenue management company or that company that is doing our dynamic pricing for airfare. And one of the things I think we can all kind of remember what the pictures look like when you had these, you know, commercial airliners start to, you know, strap in packages to the seats, right? People weren't traveling, but products still needed to move. E-commerce boomed and saw growth that no one had expected in the years prior to it. And so now you had all of these airlines kind of thinking about, you know, what parts of their business, you know, they can bolster and improve and kind of defer any of the risk that might come along with something that happened last year. And so what we've seen is we've seen our customers actually look to pros to leverage our products and our capabilities in ways they haven't done before. So hold aside passenger travel for a second. They're using our CPQ solution to manage how they sell capacity on either in an airline or an airplane or, freight containers, things of that nature. So can you price something based on how big it is and kind of like playing Tetris, how it fits into a shipping container or an airplane, and price based on how much capacity is still left when something is mission critical and needs to be delivered on time? So the whole notion of transportation and logistics, in addition to passenger travel, has been great. And then beyond that, we're also seeing, one of the parts of airline travel that we expect to kind of come back first is the stuff that the three of us are all well accustomed to, and that is business travel. And so how do you work with your corporate accounts to negotiate the right structures for what their corporate travel policies might look like? And so again, using our technologies to align on, the optimal agreement structure between airline and corporation for corporate travel. So we've really expanded our horizons beyond, and we still love passenger travel, don't get me wrong, but through this pandemic, we've seen, use cases for our technology emerge and become extremely popular. So I think, in the next 5 years, PROS is the most important platform an airline could invest in.
So you were able to shock. Yeah. So you're basically, like you said earlier, like you co-created with your customers, kind of under the stress of the pandemic and the main part of the business kind of evaporating overnight. So the relationship went from panic to co-creation to kind of this new opportunity that is not just a temporary opportunity. It's one that adds to the business on both ends, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
So
it's not bad.
Let's take this to what new hobbies did you learn during the pandemic? I know you're building your PCs. I know you're building PCs. You're using very expensive cases. I know.
Yeah.
Leon Lee. I saw. Right.
It's pretty. It's equally as pretty as it is powerful. But I would say there have been a couple of hobbies that I've picked up. So my wife and I, we bought a house in the suburbs actually shortly before the pandemic. So we lucked out. So one of the first hobbies that I had picked up during that time period was a little bit of woodworking. Started making like my own end grain wood cutting boards and things of that nature. It's an absolute blast. And then when I made the jump from my prior company to PROS, I took about a week and a half off. And there's really nothing to do, nobody to see. And one of the things that I did was I bought, a Pioneer DJ setup, the cheap one, and taught myself how to DJ quite poorly. So I'm not setting any expectations. It does not look anywhere near as nice as that. And I will guarantee you it doesn't sound even remotely as nice as it sounds. And then most recently, it was the PC building. So I built a PC, got into, PC gaming, things of that nature, to the point where my wife was like, that's pretty cool. Want to build me one?
Oh,
so I use it as an opportunity to take my lessons learned and build a new PC, which was for myself. And you saw on your LinkedIn post. And she has a very, very, very nice and capable quasi hand-me-down.
And you got a very, very, very powerful one that will last you 2 or 3 years if you choose, or 4 if you want. So my last question on that is, what's the graphics card?
It is I really, really wanted an Asus graphics card, but I ended up with a Gigabyte Gaming OC RTX 3080. I got fortunate on one of those. I was on a Discord server and a notification came through where they were in stock, and I just started smashing the buy button without even looking at what brand. And so I got it at MSRP, and I've been quite happy with it.
Not bad, man. I have a 2080 Ti that that was the most advanced card when I built my last one. So, and you know what? There's in the game it doesn't work with.
Right, oh, absolutely.
Now. Everyone. And now that Brent has no clue what the hell we're talking about. He knows the graphics card, but Brent, of course, probably.
I'm not a gamer
with Bitcoin, but you are
back here,
right? That's it.
That's where I'm at. Anyway, so I'm not even going to ask you your sports stuff because that's kind of obvious.
I'm not actually paying attention to the Red Sox at the moment because the Bruins are in round 2 of the NHL playoffs. So that's going to be my evening activity tonight.
There's
That's
only
all right.
really one team that matters, and you probably root for them. So
Yeah. So I'm not even going to
you're
go
wise not to be asked the question because you'll never be back on the show if you answer it.
there. That's why I'm ending it now before, something is said that could ruin the whole great experience we just had.
That's right.
But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on, man. And,
Yes,
and
sir.
it's
It's awesome.
really interesting what you guys at Pros, your business and who you do it with is just fascinating. I know it must have been extremely like a roller coaster this last 15, 16 months or so, but it feels like the roller coaster ride is about to end, and or at least it's on the upswing at this point. And I think that's
Well, it's when you get back in line for the second ride, but since you've gone through all of the kind of anxiety inducing or stressful parts of it, it's just fun. It's just fun the next time around.
There it is. And it's
All right.
better than, certain things like, going to Fenway Park. But that's just, that's but hey, it's great to have you, and you would definitely be back. And trying to think, that's all I got. Do you have anything?
No, I'm good, man. I was just glad that A, you're finally on the show, and B, people got to hear your story and Prose's because it's about time. Well, your story they kind of knew. Prose's
Well,
they kinda didn't.
I appreciate the opportunity, but even beyond that, so good to see you guys again. And we used to see each other so often, traveling and in the analyst circle. And it's been too long.
I'll see you in Houston, I am sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Well, in the meantime, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and we will see you next week sometime doing something, talking about whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
we'll check in with you then. What?
Yeah. Well, we can't end until certain things happen, and now we're about to end.